Welcome back to Rider Guide. Today we're going to be looking at GoTrax's core lineup of electric folding bikes, the F1, the F2, and the F3. In this video, I'm going to be comparing these three so that hopefully you can make a decision on which one fits your needs best. We're going to be looking at price, components, performance, specs, all of the stuff you need to know which bike is going to be the best for you. Now, we already reviewed the F2 on our sister channel, Electric Scooter Guide, and I've spent a decent amount of time on the F1 and I'm really familiar with it, but the F3 is new to me, and so I've spent the last week riding this one so that I can give you the in-depth details on what each of these bikes does well and what kind of lifestyle or riding needs each bike would fit. The F1 starts at $800, and then you go up $100 for each bike. So this is $800, $900, and $1,000. Now, all three of these are 48-volt bikes, and honestly, visually, the differences aren't huge. There's only a $200 gap from the F1 up to the F3, so I think we need to dig a little deeper to see what the true differences are. To start off, I'm going to run through the most core obvious differences between these three bikes, starting with the drivetrain. The drivetrain on the F1 is a single speed. So the F1 in general is very much focused on simplicity and lightweight. This is the one you want to get if you're a smaller rider, if you're someone who is on a really tight budget, or if you're the type of person that does not want to worry about maintenance and wants the simplest, most straightforward bike that you can get. The F2 adds in a very basic 7-speed Shimano drivetrain, and the F3 actually keeps that exact same drivetrain. So if you're someone that wants to be able to shift through the gears, then obviously you're going to want to get one of these two. All three of these are hub drive bikes with twist throttles. However, the F3 does offer a torque sensor. So if you're the type of person that wants a more natural riding experience and you want to feel like you're in full control of the speed of the bike rather than the motor just having a few set levels and always running at that level, then you're going to want to go with the F3. Motor size on the F1 is 350 watts, goes up to 500 on the F2, and then stays at 500 for the F3. The F1 only gives you a top speed of 20 miles an hour, and you get a top speed of 25 miles an hour with both the F2 and the F3. All three of these have removable batteries, so it's really easy to leave the bike in one spot, pull the battery out, and charge it wherever you want to. The F3 will give you a jump in battery size from 10.4 amp hours on these two to 13.4 amp hours on the big guy. You'll also notice a small change in the diameter of each of these tires as you go up from the F1 to the F3. By the time you get to the F3, you have legit fat tires. So if you're riding all terrain, maybe you're riding in slippery weather, maybe you just like the way that fat tires feel, then again, you're gonna wanna go with the F3. Then the F1 is the only one with that really natural bike tire width. You can also see the progression in suspension going from the F1 to the F3 with no suspension on the F1, about 30 millimeters of suspension on the F2, and about 45 millimeters of suspension on the F3. Now, obviously, it's going to be easiest to talk about the F1 and the F3 because they are the most different from each other, but the F2 is kind of that Goldilocks bike that kind of has the best of both worlds. You get the lighter weight of the F1, but you get the upgraded components and features of the F3. And weight is relevant here not only for picking up these bikes, when you fold them down and need to stick them in your car, but it's also relevant for the way the bike feels when you actually jump on and ride it. So let's jump on each of these bikes for just a second and talk about overall ride feel for each one. So the biggest thing I like about the F1, besides just the simplicity of it, is also how light and nimble it feels. There's just not a lot of weight under you, and so it's so easy to control. So a few things to note with this F1 in particular. This is the version 1, and they just released version 2 of the F1, which also gets the color display that the F3 has. They've also kind of given it a little bit of a visual update, and I think that version 2 has a little bit more of a polished look to it. So while it is small and light and nimble and a lot of fun to ride, I would say that I'm probably as large as you want to be riding this bike. I'm 6'1", 200 pounds, and I think if you weigh more than this or you're taller than me, because I have the seat post, as tall as it goes, I think you're gonna want to go for one of the larger ones. However, if you're a smaller rider, it is hard to beat just the simplicity of this bike, and it is plenty fast. I mean, this thing is so zippy. You're not dealing with a lot of weight, so it just gets up and goes. Now, this has the same battery size as the F2, and I range tested the F2 and got 22 miles in the highest riding mode. It has a maximum range of 40, 45, somewhere around there. So if you're riding in the lower riding modes, you should be able to draw it out to those higher numbers. But because the motor on this is a little bit smaller and it's a little bit lighter, I would imagine you'd be able to get an additional 5 miles on this bike. I would guess somewhere in that 25 to 30 mile range riding in the highest mode with this bike, which is really, really great for the price. And I even think that this battery is the largest battery at this price, according to what GoTrax says. Honestly, the cable brakes have been totally fine, and with the top speed of only 20 miles an hour, I don't feel like I need more. So here's just a quick riding demo. I'll go up to the top speeds here. Got it in pedal assist mode 5. And as you can see, it gets up to that, 19 and a half, 20 mile an hour real easily. The gearing is really good. It's only single speed, but I'm not really spinning in place at all, except when I get above 20 like that. But it's definitely geared to feel like you're pedaling normally when you're up at the highest speeds. 20 miles an hour on this bike is plenty fast. The other ones do 25, but you don't feel like you need it on this bike. Now, as someone who is a big fan of the simplicity and the compactness and the normal tire size of this bike, I genuinely think that the F1 would be my personal choice if I had to choose one of those three. I have just turned into a person, the more and more bikes I review and the more scooters I review, that values simplicity and values a straightforward product. And there's something to be said for how straightforward this bike is. But you might not be that type of person, and so let's jump onto the F2 and see if the upgrades are worth it. Now, the F2 has the largest amount of immediately noticeable differences when going from one bike up to the next one. You can feel the jump up in size, the jump up in weight, the larger, wider tires are immediately noticeable. You get a little bit of front suspension. As the Goldilocks bike, the one with features of both the F1 and the F3, this would be the one that I'd be the most willing to recommend for the majority of riders. At $800, I think the price is really good, and you make that step up into getting suspension, getting tires that can handle a little bit of dirt riding. You don't get that jump up in battery, but the range is still really good, getting 22, 23 miles in that highest riding mode. There's a pretty significant jump in weight up to the F3, and so if you're a person that's regularly folding this bike up and sticking it in a car or needing to carry it upstairs, then I would say that this is the one to get if you think that the F1 is too small for you, or maybe not doesn't have enough features for you. It still maintains a level of nimbleness and deftness that the F3, doesn't quite have, but it's definitely not as quick and smooth as the F1. Just like with the F1, the F2 version 2 does have the upgraded display and kind of overall extra level of polish, so that is something to note. You still have cable brakes on this bike. I thought that maybe they went up to hydraulic brakes on the new version, but they actually didn't. I think getting the hydraulic brakes on the F3 might be a big enough reason to do the $100 upgrade, especially if you already like other features of the F3 more than the F2. But this is that happy medium bike. This is the balance. This is the one you get if maybe you're getting your first bike and you're not 100% sure what you like, or if maybe you can't make up your mind. I think this is the one to get, and this has the most, let's say, standard set of features that you typically find at this price. But let's jump up to the F3 now and see if the added weight and added features significantly change the way that bike feels to ride. So this is the fully updated F3. So this display that you see here is the one that's going to be on the F1 and the F2 as well. Now, in a lot of ways, this is almost identical in terms of feel to the F2. You can feel a little bit of that extra weight under you, but it's not a humongous jump. And you can, feel the effect of those fat tires a little bit and the increased suspension. But generally, with all the components and the size and that kind of stuff, you're getting a very similar riding experience to the F2. Now you're getting that jump in battery size from 10.4 to 13.4, and then you're getting this torque sensor, which definitely does change the riding dynamic in terms of the motor feel and acceleration and that kind of stuff. The F3 kind of offers that best of both worlds, where you get the torque sensor for a nice natural riding experience where, it only assists you if you really ask for it. But then you also have that just pure hub drive power in the form of this twist throttle here. This is obviously going to be the best bike for larger riders or people who are going to be riding on dirt and that kind of stuff. I think the F2 is capable on dirt. It's got, wide enough wheels and that kind of stuff, but these fat tires, fully embrace that kind of gravel off-roading style of riding. And if you're someone who goes camping or RVing and that kind of stuff, then this is going to be the one that you want to go with. My only small complaint with this F3 is just the fact that the torque sensor needs a little bit more coercing than it probably should need. I feel like I need to pedal just a little bit harder than I really should have to get the most power out of that motor. But keep in mind, less than $1,000, you don't really expect torque sensors at this price at all. So the fact that it's available, I think, is a great option. So there you have it, F1, F2, F3. You see a pretty linear progression. You kind of can see exactly where the $100 upgrade is going for each of these bikes. Hopefully by now you have a good idea of which one is best for you. If you like any of these bikes, you can check them out down below in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Stay frosty.